it's hacking off the foot to not have to do pedicures.
Yeah. I'm fucking pissed off.
Yeah. I know. I mean, it's funny. We always go dark when we do pre-tapes.
Why is that, Andy? Why
I don't
do
know.
we get...
I think it's because we don't have that time to uh, find a little bit more lighthearted kind of stories and.
Maybe you know what? You know how this started is because you acted like an asshole, like in the behind the scenes. Fucking prick.
This is true. This is true. But I don't. But
Hell,
I
even
don't think it's. I don't think it's the direct cause. Because I think no matter what, every single time we do pre-tapes, it always goes like kind of like this dark kind of angry sort of direction.
And I don't think our movie review is going to really change that much either, because that really dives into some interesting, deep topics.
It is the movie, Blade Runner is kind of a downer. There's not that much hope in it.
No, there's not.
But I guess we'll do the best we can, and so. In the most sloppiest of all transitions, let's get into the movie review for this week, which is Blade Runner, starring Harrison Ford and directed by Ridley Scott. And let me just bring up. Okay, so yes, in Blade Runner, in the 21st century, a corporation develops human clones to be used as slaves in colonies outside the Earth, identified as replicants. In 2019, this year. Yeah, exactly, yeah. In 2019, a former police officer is hired to hunt down a fugitive group of clones living undercover in Los Angeles. So that's the quick kind of rundown of that. And so I guess we'll begin our review. So yeah, what were your initial thoughts, Robert?
Because I've watched this movie twice, kind of the same thing with Mad Max. I had never seen this movie before, and so I watched it once, and I was like, and I kind of didn't really know what to think about it, so I was like, all right, let me go back and like watch it again and kind of get in the right like mindset now that I know kind of like what happens, and let's look at it more critically. And so I did that today.
Mm-hmm.
It's a and it kind of brought me back to, there's a couple of games that I've played that kind of also dive into this issue with and I think there's been a lot of people who've been talking about like kind of this similar issue like in various podcasts and whatnot with artificial intelligence and stuff, or actually, well, that level of intelligence, it's called something else. It's not artificial intelligence. There's something else that it's called, and I can't think of the name of it right now.
Singularity?
Something along those lines. It's something completely
different. It's like when the AI becomes like self-aware.
Right. And it's a different term, and I can't remember what that term is right now, but there's a couple of games.
I mean, from what you're describing, it sounds like the singularity, like that theoretical point where AI will, attain self-awareness.
Yeah, it
or consciousness.
Yeah, there's a couple of games. One game that I've played earlier in the year, and another game that I've played, in the past. It was a Mass Effect deals with this issue. The Mass Effect series deals with this issue, and then a game that recently came out, Detroit Become Human, kind of deals with this very same issue where they've created this artificial intelligence, and we're not really because Blade Runner, it kind of comes off of the where it starts. It's obviously they have created the technology to create these beings, but we're at the back end because they've eliminated the majority of what they called the replicants, which were used for warfare or doing dangerous missions, what
Hmm.
have you. So they were
Yeah,
essentially
or really like
created as
dangerous, kind of like
slaves.
menial labor, like mining
Right.
or some sort of exploration or construction.
Right, and it's similar in the other games that I played too. In Mass Effect, there was a alien race that created uh, these robots, which I'm trying to think of. I think they were called the Quarians. That and they created these this AI that like was they had sentience, but they were used as slaves. But then they
Hmm.
ended up like revolting against their creators and ended up becoming their own race. And
Hmm.
so then because of that, like AI was deemed illegal, same as in Blade Runner,
Right.
and was and kind of dealt with that same issue. Then in Detroit Become Human, there was all the characters that you um, control are these AI robots that were created, and while they're kind of these they have their own control mechanisms, but they break free and become like they kind of create their own memories and become human in a sense.
Hmm.
Um, and that's kind of like what this movie deals with. It's like what is a human? What is who's living? Are just because like they're not fully um like they're not human like as we are human, but like they're created to think and can form memories and can have feelings. Is that what makes you a person? And it's kind of a mind fuck if you really think about it.
Right. It is. Yeah, because
And I think
it's
this
dealing
is
with like
something
these
that I
really
think
heady
people have
things.
wrestled with that throughout history.
What was that?
And this is an issue that I think people have thought about throughout history. And I don't know if this will become a real problem
Hmm.
for us. I as a Christian, I don't think that this will be there's something where like I don't think God would allow this, but who knows?
Right.
It's
Well, I
not going to
mean,
happen in our lifetime. I'll say that.
because we are imperfect beings, I don't think that we will ever have the ability to create in the same way that God, creates or created
And
us.
that's why I don't think. Yeah, and I don't think that's why I don't think it's going to happen.
Right. And because we are limited, there's no way that because we ultimately have to program and code this this thinking machine, and and because we are so limited, I think our limitations will be then passed on to that machine. So it'll only go so far as we are able to allow it to go.
It's kind of like because we're at a point like the where Blade Runner begins. They've already like kind of developed this artificial intelligence technology to create these replicants. Yet at the same time, they were better than humanity, but not. But at the same time, not as good because
Right.
there were flaws.
That was the only flaw that they had was they had a very short life span, especially the military units. They only had a lifespan of about 4 years, and the whole like kind of subplot of this story is I guess the antagonist. If you want to, I never really saw Roy Batty as the antagonist or the bad guy, I should
I
say.
felt bad. I felt
Yeah,
really bad for
he was
him.
a very even though he was set up as kind of like the antagonist to Harrison Ford's Deckard. I don't think he was the bad guy. He was just he was just the opposite of Deckard. Um, And this kind of the sub plot of Blade Runner is Roy Batty's quest in prolonging his life.
Right.
And I think it and I think it culminates. I'm like, oh, spoiler alert! It culminates in Roy Batty's death, and like I think one of the most beautiful speeches ever given on film, where he talks about like about his uniqueness and about his experience and how like they'll be gone forever now. Describing his death as like tears lost in the rain. Um, yeah, really, really sad. And I think as much as he was supposed to be the antagonist, I think he's more of a sympathetic character because he just wants to live, and and he's attained some level of sentience, of self awareness, whatever you want to call it. But he just wants the ability to live out like a normal human lifespan.
I think I think of the characters, Deckard was. It felt like he developed sympathy towards the replicants as time went on, because obviously, like he, and we don't know what
Right.
because he had been a Blade Runner for a long time. Because
Mm-hmm.
when we are entered in the movie, he's retired, like he's out of the game.
Right. Yeah, he's been out of the game, and he gets like kind of like that line in Godfather Part 3, like just when you think I'm out, they pull me back in, and this is kind of like his last job kind of thing.
Right, and um, this case I think affected him a lot because as he's searching out these replicants, and yeah, he did kill some, but he developed there was something that he saw in these replicants that differed from previous than in the past, because he obviously develops a love interest in one of the replicants.
Yeah, Rachel.
Rachel, yeah, and I think while he was kind of fighting for his life against the quote unquote antagonist, I think he developed kind of a almost a sadness for
Yeah, he
because
definitely.
the
Yeah,
thing is, like, because Deckard should be dead, but like he was saved by him.
Right. Yeah. Decker definitely, I think, develops respect for Roy Batty. And
Yeah,
and he definitely, and I think he definitely develops an empathy for him, and his struggle, his quest to just merely exist. Um, and just to
and you
have the
think about it,
choice, and just to have the choice of of life, not just have just not just having an expiration date stamped on his ass. uh,
true. And I think why he develops that respect too, because if you look at the how, because this is set in this futuristic Los Angeles.
mhm.
If you think about it, because the whole movie is, even when it's daylight, it's very dark. Like the
Right.
whole world is very dark, right?
Hmm.
And everyone, it seems like everyone is fighting kind of to survive anyways. And I think Deckard, seeing that the replicants are fighting for the same thing that he wants and what the people around him want, they're just fighting to to live another day and to survive.
Right. Or like,
And
and even like, I think the stand-in for heaven in this movie is living off world, off planet, on one of the colonies that they keep like
right,
advertising or talking about, like kind of in the background. of this entire movie, because like you see like the blimps with like the sign saying like "live off world" and da it's the place
And it's like,
of
and then you have like
opportunities,
the
and it's yeah, and so it's kind of like the promised land, but for these replicants who spend majority of their lives out uh, in the colonies, they know that it's not this glamorous promised land.
right.
It's more it's filled with violence and hardships too.
Because it was there what you because it you see that dichotomy where um the geneticist asks one of the before he knew she was a replicant. It's like, why are you still on Earth? Why aren't you on one of the colonies?
Hmm.
And it's like, she doesn't give him like, the straight answer, but like, that's after hearing from Roy, like it's like you don't know what I've seen.
Right.
And it's kind of like you realize like, oh yeah, it's not this it's not what's advertised. It's definitely it's it's crazy. So it's a really it's interesting. It's just the whole movie is just kind of like a very dark thought experiment.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, it's a dark thought experiment. Like when does life begin? Or I mean, we're still kind of trying to tie it back. Kind of tying it to the abortion things. Like when does life begin? You know.
And like I said, yeah, I think this is a movie that perfectly ties into what we've been talking about today, in
Hmm.
that if it's like what do you do with like and I think this is a good thought experiment because it's it's in the whole movie. The movie doesn't make you feel good. I'll just say that
No,
it's a
no.
good movie. It
There's
doesn't make
there's
you
no
feel good.
real like happy ending or like actual resolution to anything. It's just it just leaves you kind of with more questions you, and kind of questioning your own sentience or um,
Right.
like kind of like the Matrix. Like, are we like really are we in real life, or are we actually in a simulation? That kind of thing. It's like, are we really alive, or are we really like maybe we're just like we're like one of these like replicants?
Yeah. Right. Keep talking, Andy. I'll be right back.
Okay. Um, yeah, for those of you who haven't seen Blade Runner before, it is one of those real like head scratchers of a movie, and it does kind of fill you with a little bit of doubt about your own existence, or like the meaning of your own existence. And so it's definitely one of those movies that you should watch. And I hope I can speak for Robert when I say that it's an important movie to watch. If only just to get your mind thinking about these things. Like kind of tying it back to the earlier topics, especially abortion. When is a what constitutes a life? When does it begin? Is it merely the collection of experiences that we have, or is it does life just happen? Uh, does life just happen, as you are conceived, or like as in terms of these replicants when they're created? So a lot of deep philosophical questions for you to kind of wrestle around with in this movie. When you say what wouldn't you say, Robert?
Oh, I would say like the thing that because when I first because like I said, I saw this movie twice within the last week, and I think the first time I saw it, I was like, what it kind of took. I had to really think about what I was like. What am I watching? And unlike our movie from last week, which was complete. It's terrible. There was no real thought experiment when it came to Mad Max, right? Like it's just
Right.
kind of it
Yeah.
was just sheer anarchy. It was in essence it was nothing. This one, like you actually have to. It does kind of it connects with the things that we've been talking about over the past few weeks with kind of like while these replicants, they look like adults, but they're really not that old. Like they're only like maybe a few months old, a few years old,
Hmm.
and
Yeah. I mean,
in the
it
case of
goes to when that one replicant, what's his name? Was it Leon?
yeah,
Yeah,
Leon,
Leon confronts Deckard and he asks him like, "How old am I?" When in reality, since he's a
right,
replicant, he's not that old. He may be like at the most, or like his particular model might his expiration date might have been like for or like 3 years or 4 years.
right,
Even though like through like
and it's like
certain like upgrades or whatever, he might have been able to extend it like a couple of years. So in truth, he might even though he looks like a grown adult, he might be he really might be only like 6 or 7.
and because where the case changes with is Rachel was kind of in essence the perfect replicant because unlike the Roy and Leon and the rest, um, Rachel had memories that weren't her own that were implanted into her. So she
Right.
had quote unquote memories and feelings and it took based off of like the test that they did to determine if they were a replicant or not. Um, while like it only took like a handful of questions to for Deckard to find out about and the other Blade Runners to figure out about like Leon and the others. For Rachel, it took hundreds and hundreds of questions to finally determine that she was a replicant.
Hmm.
But like, and the other thing is like, unlike the others, Rachel didn't know she was a replicant.
Right. Or like but as Tyrell said, but she was starting to suspect that she was.
Right, and that's the but like it was for that reason because she had memories and emotions different from the other replicants is why she was able to potentially survive longer than the rest of them because that was kind of the cushion that was needed to keep
Right. Yes.
her
As Tyrell said,
intact.
like in the newer models of replicants, they would give them a memory to kind of like anchor them uh, into reality, so that they would be able to better acclimate or basically not go insane. Because I
Right.
think I think what that points out is that everyone needs like some sort of anchor or um, centering kind of something to center them essentially.
Something that you can hold on to that you can always like go back to like is you can go off so far but where your center your foundation is in life.
Right, right, exactly, exactly, exactly.
And I think honestly, like, and while this is a very very dark movie, I think that's actually a really good kind of like a Christian point, like, because our life has a foundation. We would say that our life is kind of our foundation is Jesus Christ. We have that to hold on to. Or you could say that about anybody that has any sort of belief system, like they have a center that they can always go back
Right.
to.
Or yeah,
And
or like any like deep, any sort of deep conviction that they hold fast to. Um,
and it's like, and I think that this movie kind of shows the importance of that. It's like that having a good conviction belief system, something to hold you down, that you can always go back to. Um, that's important. It doesn't matter who you are.
hmm. Hmm. So do you think? Well, in Roy's case, then do you think it's his rejection of the rejection of his foundation, or like the memory that they implanted in him, and
But see,
or he
the
was
way I understand,
seeking his own center,
I think that was
not
the
the one that
case.
they implanted him with, but he was seeking his own. I think.
You're right, and I think that's that. I think that's part of why like that particular group of like replicants was, well, I said like their creator Tyrell was saying it's like, yeah, you're burning very bright, but like but you don't live as long, and I think that's part of the reason is because they were seeking that out, but there was nothing really to there was maybe no foundation to be had, and I don't know, it's just it's tough. I might have to go back and watch it again just to kind of
Yeah.
like, because I want
Yeah.
to like like looking at like Roy specifically,
Hmm.
because obviously like Deckard and Rachel are kind of like the main ones that we're focused on, but
Right.
going back and looking like, okay, what is Roy doing? Like, what is he actually saying? I might have to go back and do that again, but yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit, I've seen this. I've seen Blade Runner multiple times, and every single time I'm kind of left scratching my head and like noticing things I didn't before, and it's like, oh man, all these new things, and like what I thought was the meaning before, and I look at it now, and it's like I think it's something completely different, and yeah, it's one of these movies that you could watch 100 times, and you'll take away a new thing every single time.
Yeah, it's yeah, I it definitely feel like that's kind of how I'm seeing the movie too. It's I'm actually looking forward to seeing the new one,
Oh, you
2049.
haven't seen 2049?
No, I have it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah. Uh, I saw it. Pretty solid movie. I don't think it compares to the original, but it has its own strengths.
All right.
So yeah. Okay.
How
Well.
would
Okay.
you
All
rate the
right.
movie?
Let's get to our rating. Robert, what do you give this movie?
I'm gonna give it a and this also might be just because we're coming off of Mad Max, but I'm gonna give this a 4
Really?
because I think it's
Oh,
like I said,
okay.
it's
Sorry,
not
my bad. I was thinking of something else. Four, yeah, four is really good. Yes, yes, yes. Because we do it
I would say like
on Nocturnal transmissions. We do it out of five. I'm
yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I
Um,
because someone asked me because I went to go watch Captain Marvel and someone asked me out of 10, and so
oh well, actually, well, we'll deal with that on another day.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
So four for you.
the I would say 4 just because um, I don't know if it's necessarily like a great movie per se, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the what the movie provides as far as thought content
Mm-hmm.
um, is very interesting, and I like movies that make me think on a different level,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is a perfect movie for that. So I'm gonna give it 4 stars.
Okay. Yeah. Because I have such a close connection to this movie. I'm just I'm gonna come in at 4.5.
Ooh,
just because I have seen it before, and it's
is
one
that
of
your
those
highest
movies.
rating on a movie? By the way,
What was it?
is that your highest movie rating? Because
Four
I
and a
don't think
half.
you've done a 5 star.
I
Yeah,
don't know. I've never done a 5 star.
so that's man, that's high praise.
Yeah, so four and a half for me, because I think visually, and I think just like thematically, and just like you said, the thought content in this movie is great. I mean, I'm not saying it's a perfect movie, but it's one it has like that, like rewatchability.